Good evening and welcome to the City Council meeting for the City of Lamar for Monday, May 10th, 2021. I'm Kirk Pressman, Mayor for the City of Lamar. It's been a very exciting time for Lamar. We have a lot of things happening. Last weekend at the Willow Creek Park, we had the Sand and Sage Fair. They had the Wild West Barbecue Cook-Off. I think that's the right name. But it was a very big event. There was so many different barbecue vendors there. It was a really well-attended activity. Pretty exciting to see everybody get out and about and get together once again before, like we did right before COVID. So it was very nice to have that opportunity to mingle. And I hope you got a chance to get out and do that. However, if you didn't have a chance to get out and enjoy it, we do have Lamar Days coming up this weekend. And I want to invite everybody out to Lamar Days. We will be having the parade that'll start at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning. I've asked the council to join me as far as a little float that we're putting together, a trailer that we're putting together, so the council and the mayor and some of the city staff can join in and participate in the Lamar Days parade. After that, they have the rod run that's happening at Willow Creek Park and so many more activities than that. So please try to join us, attend out there at the Willow Creek Park, and hopefully we'll see you out there. Moving on to the city council meeting, we do have Galen Burnett here to do our invocation. Would you please?
Father, we want to thank you for your blessing and your protection upon our city. Father, we thank you for the moisture that you've given to us. And it's always thrilling to me anyway, to see the spring coming and seeing things green up and life coming back. Father, we thank you that you have protected us from COVID very much. And we thank you that we're seeing the restrictions being rescinded and changed. Father, help us to now take this increasing freedom and use it to improve ourselves, our city, our county, our state, and our nation. Father, we just pray that you will be leading and guiding our city council as they meet tonight. Give us insight, wisdom about what is the best thing to do, the best decisions, the best proposals, the best way to operate. Father, we pray your blessing upon our city council, upon our leaders, people who work for our city. We pray for your protection upon them. We pray for your encouragement and your strengthening. Father, we thank you for all the things that you're doing to help our city. And so we thank you and we praise you, and we want to just bring glory to you. And we do this in the name of our Savior, Jesus. Amen.
Joe, would you lead us in a pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, before we call the meeting to order, we did have one modification for our agenda. We do have an item that the Police Chief Kyle Miller would like for us to add in. It's a proposed agreement for law enforcement service and security services for the prom. Due to the short amount of time before the prom, it's pretty vital that we put that in tonight's agenda. So can we move that from at the very end of the meeting, right before the miscellaneous? We'll insert it in as item number 12, and then we'll shift the miscellaneous to item number 13. Okay, so if that's okay with everybody, we'll vote on that after we get the roll call completed. Are there any questions before we move on to that? Okay, so we will move on to the, I'll call the meeting to order at 7:04. Roll call.
Joe Gonzalez,
Here.
Rafael Rodriguez,
Here.
Jerry Jenkins,
Here.
Kirk Crespin,
Here.
Oscar Riley,
Here.
Daniel Smith,
Here.
Anne Marie Crampton, here, Steve Kill,
Here.
Christy McCray, here, Lance Clark,
Here. Okay, so with that said, we do have the agenda addition that we discussed before the meeting, the roll call. Moving agenda item number 12, proposed agreement for law enforcement Can we get a motion for that?
So moved.
So move.
And a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to add in proposed agreement for law enforcement services to item number 12. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And we would vote with the recorder as well. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is our consent agenda. Has everybody had an opportunity to look at the consent agenda?
Question on something.
Do we have any items that need to be removed and voted on separately?
Well, I have a question on, Pat can probably answer this. Ours aggregate gravel for airport military training. I thought the Air Force was gonna pay for that.
They did actually pay the station. Out the pay for their center.
Okay,
Did last in return.
okay. That's the only question I had on it.
Okay. Seeing all answers or all questions answered, do we have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any final questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's your vote. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Next item is our public comment portion. During this portion of the meeting, anyone may speak on any subject that does not appear on the agenda. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each, and it is at the discretion of the council if they would like to have more. Is there anybody in the audience tonight that would like to speak to the city council? Okay, if you could just state your name.
Keith Nighty.
Okay.
We've got an ongoing,
An address, right? Did you need the address?
Which would be address?
1000 West Oak Street here in Lamar.
Thank you, Keith.
And here's your pictures. Explain part of the problem. For several years, we've been having a problem in the 100 block of West Poplar Street. There's a business there that works on semi trucks. They use the city property to work on the trucks. We've complained about it to just about every department in the city except for the garbage department, I think, but everybody in the city knows about it. I talked to the prior city administrator, I talked to council members, talked to the PD, talked to the fire department. We've got up to 6 or 7 trucks sitting there any day. One's been sitting there for, I'm assuming about 2 years, but I had pictures, but last time I got a new phone, when they transferred pictures, I've lost most of my pictures, but the photo showed that the one truck's been sitting there for 8 months, never been moved. The PD has gone over a couple of times when the trucks did not have tags on them and they got some of them moved and then they brought them right back in. It's just a continual problem. The businesses in the area, customers can't park close to the business because all the parking's taken up by these trucks. Why the business moved in there in the first place makes no sense because there is absolutely no room for them to park the trucks. Council member brought it up a while back to the council and still nothing's happened. It's there's a new business in the Green Street building that when COVID hit, that kind of slowed them down. They're starting to get orders now. They're talking like they're going to be starting getting up operating. That's where they usually have their trucks parked, is right in front of their business. That one picture shows 6 semis sitting there, plus their service truck sitting on my sidewalk working on one. I need some help. So far, the fire department hasn't been able to do anything. Police department hasn't been able to do anything. I know the street department's aware of that they're leaking oil and fuel and everything on the asphalt. I don't know what it takes. From what I understand, the vehicle can't be parked on the street for more than 72 hours. One of them, they're going in weeks and months instead of hours. My daughter got tagged, her vehicle tagged one day during the workday because she was a little bit of her car was on the yellow next to our business because their trucks and their service trucks were taking up all the parking. We just need to figure out something to do. I mean, yeah, they've got a right to have a business, but they don't have a right to operate their business on the city streets.
Kyle, have you had, could you comment on this? Have you had code enforcement look at this before?
Well, it's actually, I can't tell you the trucks we towed. I know we went over there 2 or 3 different times, because it's in my truck, that's interested. We go there, we'll mark them, they bring them into compliance, and then we have to leave them alone for them. I'm not aware of a 72-hour rule as far as they can leave them there, so they're registered. We can't chalk tires anymore. There's a recent ruling from the federal government. They used to you might make a line on the tire, not on the ground, to see if it's moved. It's considered a search. The federal government says they can't do that anymore. So there's really no way to tell if they're moving them every day or not, but the ones that are unregistered, obviously if they have flat tires or broken down, something like that, you can take care of those pretty simple. As far as the ones that are just parked there and they're legally parked and registered, we can talk to Mr. Daly on again. I went over there, personal conversation with him, and how many tickets we read to him. I don't know what else we do to get compliance from Mr. Daly.
Well, and I would hate to have to go through the council and do some kind of an ordinance because of one individual that's having semis on the truck. I mean, that's kind of what happened with our
Next meeting,
previous.
I can bring a half dozen more people.
Well, no, I'm not saying just the one. I'm saying the one business that's not following the rules and making it difficult on everybody. I'd hate to have us pass a law, just, enforce it with one person. So I can understand your frustration. I mean, it's just this one individual, and I would hate to punish the whole city of Lamar and by doing another law or ordinance or something to try to make this work. So, if you could go back over there and talk to them tomorrow or see if we can schedule something in there. And, we're just gonna have to really get, I don't know what else to do other than get very strict about this. Do you have ideas, Lance?
Yeah, well, we were just talking, the way that I've, unfortunately, sometimes in the past, when this issue has arisen, the council has directed that and actually passed an ordinance with no parking in certain areas of the community.
No
Kind
parking
of,
just in that
it's kind of extreme, but the only way Kyle could enforce this is have no parking signs approved by the council.
No overnight parking would take care of it.
I mean, just something like that I would think that maybe Kyle can come back with a recommendation on something of, no parking. A lot of times there's no parking between the hours of this and this and, something like that. Because I don't know, this is a problem during the day, I'm assuming, right?
Around the clock.
So even at night,
Yeah.
it's an issue.
Well, that one blue sim, I don't know if you saw those pictures of that. One blue sim I've got red arrows pointed to. It's been sitting in that same spot. I can only prove in the pictures 8 months, but I know it's been there closer to 2 years or more. And it hasn't moved.
No
And
parking.
when they come and tag the other ones that towed them, that one was still there and it was still there when they were done.
Well, like I said, posted no parking is the way to deal when you have a specific area of the community. Like this is very site specific where we're having an issue.
Or no overnight. like
No,
you said.
well, then again, I would kind of let Kyle come up with a suggestion that,
No parking would defeat the purpose of me coming to
Well-
you because the customer still, the business will still need to have parking there.
well, no, we don't want to do that. That's why I wanted the chief to take a look at it and work with everybody around there to see what would be adequate. It's still for everybody to still operate their businesses.
Right.
Sure.
So possibly maybe and this is just a suggestion, but in that area for business, even if we put in no parking between the hours of, say, 11:30 and 1:30, 11:30 PM to 1:30 AM, then if he's there, he's gonna get ticketed.
Well,
right?
you
You do
would,
that enough times, and he's gonna figure out that he's not gonna, either he's gonna have to move him around every night, or he's gonna figure not to park there.
well, you would do, normally what you would do is you would go between the hours of 9 PM and 5 AM or something like that.
There is an apartment on the alley that the person that lives in that alley out parks there overnight. He's not there, he's normally there during the day, but he does have, he can park his vehicle there at night, so that's kind of.
Well,
No truck, overnight truck parking,
Well-
or something like that, I don't know, but we need to get something figured out.
yeah, that's why I kind of just left it open, because we have to research that to see what, number one, what is legally binding? So we're not restricting, we're not super restrictive that we're just targeting, but yet we need to let everybody still live their life and operate their business. So, but that's about the only way you're going to really attack it.
Kyle, there was a few years back, we had passed an ordinance about semi-parking. Does that not cover this?
No, it's there's a big limit on that, California, because the trucks are pulling up and taking out the 3 or 4 driveways. So it has to be, I think it's 20,000 pounds. So as long as the truck is detached from the trailer, it's legal with the truck.
Okay, so could we amend the current ordinance, to say no semi-truck parking overnight?
But then again, you're punishing.
The whole city for one individual, right, right.
Um,
And you know, that unfortunately, that's kind of what happens sometimes, and that would be yeah, I don't want to punish the whole city for that, but that's,
Whatever we're talking, I say maybe like a 2-hour park. You park for 2 hours. And then you got, I would follow around, like Steve said, let me do some. Think about.
You gotta think about that. That's not gonna work either.
And then come back.
okay. Can you bring that back next meeting?
Well, yes.
See, it's a commercial zoning. I mean, I've put weight limits on, like, obviously you can do all residential streets, you can do, but when you're in that commercial district there, it gets a little tougher.
Right.
To regulate those vehicles, because people still have to operate their businesses. I mean, there's a specific issue here that we got to figure out how to pass something without penalizing without penalizing the community.
Where that business is, you have residential house right next to it. So they're not only taking up for their commercial business, but they're taking up all the parking for the residential that is right next to it.
Right, that's why we did it by zoning. A lot of times there'll be residential units in commercial districts. It just depends. That's why I said it's going to take some research. It's not going to be something that we're going to be able to come up with right now, because that has to kind of give some thought to this and really look at the area, see what will work.
Can you put on a business license? All business must be conducted on the licensee's hold, the property.
Well, I think that would have far-reaching effects in this community.
Yeah.
I think that would really, really hurt
A lot of business.
a lot of businesses, Oscar. A lot of times you'll be able to pass ordinances where all the business has to be conducted wholly within an enclosed building. That's not going to work here. There's just no way stuff like that can work here in our, just our locale. I mean,
This picture, this truck parked on the sidewalk, that's definitely not your problem.
well, the truck parked on the sidewalk, now that's different. The police can tag that, yes.
And I can't get him to take it through with me for that, but he got quite a while. Because I'm working on it. He had the whole sidewalk blocked, but stop.
Did we set the fines?
We can only go up to $300. Yeah,
Well, you do set, if you want, you can go anywhere from 0 to 300 for municipal. What's the fine for the sidewalk, Kyle?
It's not much.
Do you remember? You could increase it up to 300. That's up to that's at the discretion of the council.
Or maybe the
Oh,
second and third offense would be much higher.
And I believe that's generally what we do. We write it for the ticket, it's whatever it's set. Like the third one, the film, I remember that coming back. Because obviously the ticket's not getting what it's asking for.
Make them 100, 200, 300. Judge.
So if we were to do a no overnight parking in that area, or like you mentioned, the 2-hour parking in that area, and we do an ordinance just for that area, Could we have a fee along with that? Could we set that at the same time?
So there's already an ordinance concerning time, for the street sweepers.
Okay.
And I think we can probably piggyback on. With some of the business district is no parking between, 3 and 6 in the morning or something along those lines. But then we usually piggyback right off the bat. Of course, it's already in place.
Okay. Could you give him the mic? Jerry was mentioning that she couldn't hear Kyle. Sorry.
You know,
Could you say that
Kyle,
one more
when,
time?
when you're
Sure.
looking at that, yeah, check that out. That makes,
Right, so right now we already have an ordinance for the street sweepers so that they can get through the business districts and run the street sweepers. So I think we may be able to piggyback something off of that. It may help with this situation and we don't have to come back with a whole new ordinance. It'd just be a matter of putting up some signage to make sure. But I think it's hit and miss. I don't think it's every day the way that it's set up right now. It's Monday and Thursdays in certain parts and Wednesdays and Fridays in certain parts. So we'd have to do a little checking into it to see what we already have on the books, to see if we can just put some signage up that may help alleviate the problem.
well, you don't want to penalize the individual that needs to park there as well, as a resident too. So,
The house that she mentioned on the corner
well, there's,
also has to park in front of their house, which half the time they can't.
well, and but that's another consideration. That's why I said it won't be resolved tonight because you have to look at all of those scenarios and make sure you're really not putting somebody out.
Well, if you could work on a solution between now and the next meeting and report back and let us know what you found, that would be greatly appreciated. Would that work, Keith?
Yeah, as long as we can get something happening. We've been dealing with this for years and we can't seem to get anything done. So at least we can get something, we get something going. That would be a step in the right direction.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
All the oil and diesel and stuff spilled on the street. Whose responsibility is that?
It's, if it can be proven that it's the generator of it, whoever causes it.
Lance?
I also think you want to be careful about, early discussions that you guys were having about this was punishing the business. I don't know that the city wants to get in the business of punishing a specific business or being so specific that it actually affects only that one business. I think then you run into constitutional issues of basically trying to benefit one business over the other or vice versa. So
Right.
So I said it's gotta, you gotta
I
put some
think it's
thought
got to be
into it.
general.
It's gotta be
It's gotta
thought.
be-
So we have to do a general for all commercial parking areas.
Well, you typically will apply this to specific zoning districts. That's usually how it's done because then you avoid the issue that Lance has brought up. So if you do it district by district, there's nobody penalized. It's for that industrial or commercial or residential district. That's why I said it's gotta, there's gotta be some thought given to it. So
Yeah,
to make
that's not
sure-
really retail, that's more industrial, isn't it? The zone?
it's probably commercial because it's right on Main Street.
I think it's zoned commercial right now. I think it's a C2, if memory serves me right.
The C2?
I believe so.
Like I said, it's gotta be, you gotta be careful with that. So.
Okay.
Here we go. That's the key.
Okay, well, so Chief Miller will bring back some ideas next meeting so we can discuss it and get a direction. Does that sound good to the council?
Yep.
It does. Anybody want to add anything else before we move forward? Did we have anybody else who would like to speak to the council on any item that's not on the agenda?
Martha, is
Okay.
anybody on Zoom?
All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the city treasurer's report. Kristen, do you have a report for us?
I don't have anything for this evening. Thank you.
Okay, no report tonight. The city clerk's report, Linda?
So our March sales and use tax collected in April was $421,002.07, which was up 20.8% or $72,407.73 from 2020. Our year-to-date collections were $1,626,688.26, which is up 21.45% or $287,246.88 from 2020.
That's a pretty good jump. Great.
That is all I have.
Thank you, Keith. Okay, do we have any questions for the city clerk's report? Seeing none, we'll move on to the city administrator. Steve?
Well, you took my first item, which was Lamar Days, so
Sorry.
Kirk already reminded everybody that's coming up. Memorial Day, I just want to remind everybody that the city offices will be closed for Memorial Day, that Monday, to be May 31st. North Gateway Parks, I don't know how many people have been out there lately, the kayak building. Keep in mind, when I write these reports, I write them a week ago. A lot happens in a week by the time I read it. So the kayak building is under roof right now. And they indicated, the contractor that is, indicated that they should be complete by June 1st. So that's exciting. We can get our kayaks going and get people enjoying the beach. Pat will jump on the beach again as soon as it stops raining. So we got, what do you think, Pat? Maybe another week or so? If that, so looking good. I don't know how many of you have been out there, but it's taking shape. We guessed pretty good on the normal water level. The water's actually to the level now that we kind of, we planned for. We did use some science. We went back 10 years and used 10 years of rainfall data and lake level data to set the water level in the pond. So we did use some science behind it. We just didn't guess. So.
And we were out
Everybody
there
knows.
this weekend and noticed that there was a lot of people out there enjoying the ponds. So very well attended out there at the park.
Yeah, there's actually been people out there that have been, kind of sunbathing, actually. And they're getting ready for the beach experience. We are putting in a boat ramp too. There's going to be a launch there. And I don't know if we decided yet exactly if we're going to pave it. We're just going to maybe concrete a little bit. But we figured as long as we're doing this, we might as well make it easier for people, especially those paddle boats. Those are big. Those are kind of heavy. If you can get those right into the water, it'll be a lot easier to use. So we are going to put a ramp in, and the fire department likes it obviously because then they can launch their boat easier. So it's just good for everybody all the way around. So we're actually going to do that as well. So I think Pat's formulating a game plan on that one right now as we're sitting here, but that's going into. So just happy to see all the improvements and things like that going on. Community building roof project is now completed. Good job, Craig. The roof looks great. I don't know how many people have seen it, but it looks really good. Staff training, public employment best practices. Mr. Sam Light with CIRSA is going to be conducting training, and I'm sure some of the council members are familiar with kind of annually or every other year. CIRSA likes to come in, just do a little refresher course. So that's going to be with not only the council members, but the department heads and public safety personnel. It's Monday, June 7th and Tuesday, June 8th. We're splitting the session in the training into 3 sessions, 1 for the council and then 2 for the staff to accommodate the police and fire on split shifts. So ought to be good. They'll take place at City Hall in this meeting room where the training is going to take place. So that's coming up June 7th. So everybody's aware of that. Troy Motel asbestos abatement and demolition. We did cover this in the redevelopment commission meeting, but asbestos, all that abatement is done. Craig's applied for the demolition permit. As soon as we get it, Pat will get it on the schedule. So again, proceeding fine. As soon as we get the permit, our city crews are going to demolish it. So we'll just have to get it on the schedule. He's got a lot of things going on right now. So water and sewer master plan. We're still waiting, I guess, for DOLA, the absolute final word from DOLA. Every indication we get seems that our request is going to be favorable, but we have not received the final yes yet. So I know I've spoken with Tara. Kirk, I think you have. Kristen's spoken with Tara. We get great feedback, but we haven't quite got the approval yet. So anytime now, as soon as we get that, we're going to proceed with that water and sewer master plan. That's going to include the rate analysis. That's something that DOLA consistently asks us about every time we apply for a grant. And it has to do with utilities. They bring up our rates. So, and we don't really have anything we don't have an analysis. We need something that we can use to kind of justify our position. So I know Kristen would like that too. So, and we do need that. And if there are any other questions about anything else, be happy to answer them. Joe,
Nothing else yet?
Joe, you look like you have something to ask, but I don't know.
No.
Okay.
All right, are there any other final questions for the city administrator report? Seeing none, how about the reports and correspondence from the council? Do we have any council liaison report?
I don't have anything.
I don't have anything.
And I don't have anything either. So we'll move on to the rest of the meeting. First item on the agenda under new business is bid number 41-007, which is to award a contract to build a handicap ramp, sidewalks, parking lot, curb, and tan at the North Gateway Park to Elegant Concrete. This was initiated by Craig Brooks and Kristen McCray. Craig, would you like to speak on this?
Yes, good evening, council. I have before you a proposal to award a contract to Elegant Concrete. We sent out an RFP, requested bids from 14 contractors. We received 3 back. Elegant Concrete was the cheapest of the 3 at $81,145. The next closest one was Daniels at $103.50, and then Moncor at $107,950. Elegant has done work within the city before, was involved on the farm credit as a quality contractor from La Junta, and I believe that they are more than capable of handling the project.
And even with the 10% local bid contractor preference points, it didn't.
Wasn't even close.
Yeah.
And could you tell us in the audience where that work's going to be done at North Gateway?
Yes, the work will be done on Pond 1, where there's an existing picnic shelter and an existing restroom. We plan on making a handicap accessible from that picnic shelter to the restroom, to a 3 stall parking. And then we will continue north and then have a switchback ramp that meets the handicap requirements that'll go down to the floating dock. So they will be able to park, access restroom, picnic shelter, barbecue, and the floating dock. You're welcome.
I move we accept the bid for $81,145 by Elegant Concrete and allow the mayor to sign.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to award the bid to Elegant Concrete. Are there any final questions?
I've reviewed the contract. I don't have any issues with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you have reviewed the contract.
I had a question. It seems as though, at least lately, a lot of our local contractors have been a lot higher than the out-of-state ones or out of the area ones. Is there any thoughts to when we do the bid process of asking for more bids outside the area? I mean, we have 1 in this case, 2 were local, and 2 were both extremely high.
We sent out how many?
14 to, we did it to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We did 7 local contractors and the rest were out of the city. And we
also
received-
advertise it in the paper.
And they give us the list in the bid or in the actual. Okay, any final questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 2 is to approve amendments to background screening standards and personnel handbook with regard to conducting background checks on minors. This was brought in. Did you want to speak on this, Margaret, or did you want Steve to? Could you come up? Sorry. We'll have Margaret Saldana, the Human Resources Director. speak on this?
Actually, council, good evening, council and mayor. I've actually asked Steve to discuss this.
Margaret didn't want to get up, but I'm glad you made her talk about this. That's good.
I'm here to answer any questions, so
We don't,
go ahead,
the
Steve.
minors are what, 16 and older? 16 and.
Any minors under 18 years old, Oscar. Yeah.
Did you want to elaborate on this a little?
Well, no, I mean, I happen to, we're slowly but surely catching some of these little things
Mhm.
that I personally probably would not do. I mean, background checks on minors are probably one of them. And I think we need to really get rid of that. I don't think there's even I can't even think of a protocol for it. And it applies in our case a lot because just think of our lifeguards. Shouldn't be doing anything without parental consent under 18 anyway. Rap, I'm sure you understand this more than most, but so I would strongly recommend that you approve this change.
And it says in here that you consulted with legal counsel at the Employers Council.
Yes, and that was the recommendation. If we did conduct background checks, they asked us to, go ahead and put in a policy to have the parental consent. But like Steve said, I think it's one of those things that we just want to totally eliminate.
All right. Any questions from the council?
Clark, is there anything? I mean, you just delete it, no problem.
Well, so I'm curious because I didn't have the language or what is contained in our handbook that's being eliminated. So I didn't know if there's a specific page or if it's throughout the handbook in which it talks about minors or where that's at.
Any background screening of minors. That's the only part that would be removed
I just don't
from
know
our
where
standards.
that's at.
I don't think it's that specific, Lance. We've never said anything in our handbook, if I can recall. I don't think it addresses our employees under 18, so
So it just says
All-
background checks
all
will be
employees.
performed, and it's,
Right.
right.
there's no,
And we'll
and it
just
is
add
in one
the
section.
section saying, except for, with the exception of minors.
Correct.
Right.
Uh,
And they're seasonal all the time anyway. We don't hire any full-time employees that are younger than 18. So,
And this is more internal policy, not
right,
contractual.
that's correct.
Every way that I've ever seen the handbook dealt with is that it's been brought for amending purposes, and then you put the amending date on there for which it's been amended. But, so this is kind of different to me. I mean, I understand what we're trying to do here. I guess we just want to be sure that we're accounting for that change and the date that change has taken place.
Typically, we do it by resolution when we make a change to it.
To the handbook.
Well, if you guys are good with that, then we can do a quick resolution. If everybody's good with that.
Just so it's
change,
trackable
yeah.
back to a number.
So if you all are okay with that, then we can just do a quick resolution for next meeting. Is that good?
yes.
Sounds like the easiest way to do it.
Would you be good with that too?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. We have a motion for that.
So moved.
Do we need to vote or we're just gonna table it?
Well, I think the direction is to prepare a resolution for
So we're just gonna
consideration in the next meeting. So
Okay,
everybody, we're getting the yes from everybody. So
so that's what we'll do then. Okay, thank you, Margaret. Unless anybody had any more questions for her? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on with the agenda. Agenda item number 3, schedule public hearing for the hotel restaurant liquor license for Palace Tavern Limited, DBA Tavern 1301. This is the Palace Tavern Limited, the DBA Tavern 1301, located at 1301 North Main Street. They submitted an application for a new hotel/restaurant liquor license on March 9th. Would you like to speak on that, Linda?
They turned in all their paperwork. They've had their fingerprints done. It's in the hands of the police department right now for their input. And we just need to schedule it for public hearing.
Okay.
This is the Cow Palace.
This is the Cow Palace. It's just, It's a entity within the Cow Palace.
And then when is that publishing?
I'm sorry,
When will it be published?
it will be published on
The day of the public hearing. So publish it on May 13th.
It will
So,
be published and posted on May 13th.
so would you want to hold it? When do you think the public
May
hearing?
24th.
Oh, that quick? Okay.
So we just need to schedule the public hearing for May 24th as early to the beginning of the meeting as possible. Is that correct? Are we good with that, council?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to set the public hearing for May 24th as early to 7 o'clock as possible. Any final questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimous. Okay, item number 4, consider extension of the Economic Development Incentive Agreement for Cobblestone Development. This was brought up during our Lamar Redevelopment Board, Redevelopment District Board meeting earlier tonight. But it does need to pass through the redevelopment board as well as the council. So Steve, would you like to expand on this one?
Real quick, the Cobblestone Hotel, just for the benefit of everybody watching at home, is proposing to go to just the south of the Cow Palace, just where the new Scooters is going, actually on the other side of the road, and just north of the old Lamar Inn. So hopefully we can get a project going now. The incentive agreement is the exact same one that it was previously to this, with the exception of a couple dates that have changed. Again, commencement date of October 31st, 2021, and a substantial completion date of November 30th, 2022. Other than that, the terms of the incentive are basically the same. There's some tax sharing components to it. There are some public infrastructure components to it. So it would be nice to have a new business there.
Yes, it would.
I move we extend the incentive agreement.
Second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to extend the incentive agreement with Cobblestone Development LLC. Any final questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, and the motion passes unanimous. Agenda item number 5, Aquaholics lease agreement. This lease agreement is for a non-motorized water sports rental business at North Gateway Park. This was initiated by Steve Kill. Would you like to speak on this, Steve?
Yes, this is the exact same company that we had an agreement with last year to do the kayak rentals. And they were hosting out of North Gateway Park. The only difference is this year we're gonna have a nice building for them. And as part of the process of negotiating this lease with that company, I asked them if they would consider selling live bait and maybe some soft drinks. And I indicated to them that, the city will supply the tanks, maybe some coolers and stuff like that once we get going. And it would be their responsibility to obviously buy the inventory and sell it. But I think it would be a really nice thing for all the people that are fishing out there and all the families that we're gonna find that are gonna be used the beach. I think just doing a couple things out of that building other than just the rentals would be really nice to do. They were a little hesitant because I insisted that this run for 12 months, even though they're closed for the winter months. So ultimately, we want to make sure that it's fair for everybody here and we want this amenity. That's where we came up with the $200 a month. That's what they felt they were comfortable with. Quite frankly, I'm not exactly sure if that's too low or too high. I mean, it sounded reasonable, at least for the first year, so we can see how everything goes. So it's 12 months, $200 a month lease, and I can't wait to get the company in there and get it going.
They just sell ice though. Summer will do it.
Well, and it's just little things like that, Manuel, in addition to the kayaks and paddle boards and paddle boats and stuff like that. So
So it says if the building is not ready to occupy by June 1, then it would start, then the agreement would start July 1. Would we,
Well, it will be ready June 1. I wrote this a week ago.
so there's no real.
So when I wrote it a week ago, I wasn't sure about the weather or if they were going to get the insulation on time, and it was stuck up in Denver. And since then, all that's been resolved. So I'm sure it's going to be June 1st now. Like I said, I write these a week ago, so it's been a week.
And Lance, I'm assuming that you wrote this contract?
Yeah, so I don't have any issues with it, but
Great.
Literary masterpiece. Okay, any final questions from the council?
Make a motion to accept contract with Alcoholics.
Okay,
I'll second that.
okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the Aquaholics lease agreement for non-motorized water sports rentals at North Gateway Park. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Oscar?
Just assuming that the mayor can sign. it.
And the motion passes unanimously.
I'm assuming that includes the mayor signing, right?
We didn't have that in the motion, but.
Oscar, do you want
What? I wasn't listening.
You'll use it on their side.
Yeah, it's all amended to have the mayor sign a contract with Holics.
I'll second that.
All right. Next item on the agenda is agenda item number 6. This is for the CDOT, Colorado Department of Transportation Aeronautics Grant Agreement 21-LAA-01. This is for the self-service fueling at the airport. This is from Patrick Mason. Would you like to speak on this, Pat?
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So before you tonight, we have a grant offer from CDOT Aeronautics in the amount of $25,000 for self-service fueling equipment at the airport. That it will require a $2,778 cash match from the city of Lamar. And earlier this year, Steve and I had some discussions with CDOT Aeronautics about the possibility of moving some funding up that we actually had in the 5-year capital that was scheduled for 2023 for this self-service fueling. And they notified us late last month that they had agreed to move that forward. So this is the actual grant offer that you're seeing now for that. So
I thought this self-service fueling was expected to be substantially more expensive than this.
we are currently working on.
Well, this is just our grant. This
Yeah.
isn't the cost of the
Oh, okay.
station.
Okay.
This is just our money from
Okay, so
CDOT.
this is just part of the funding to make.
Exactly. It'll help, but it's not going to cover all of it. No, so.
Yeah, originally it was like 68,000. Is that correct?
Correct.
We're hoping that we're actually waiting for Phillips 66 to get all of that done and come back to us with a revised quote. It's just that this 25,000 will go towards that. They got it, we moved it up, so.
Yes.
So is
It
this
expires
approved?
in 24, so we've got some time to put the other pieces together.
Okay. Make a motion to accept the CDOT grant. 21-LAA-01,
Second.
All right.
and authorize the mayor to sign.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Are there any final questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 7 is assignment agreement with City Service Ballot, Phillips 66 for fuel supply and aviation refueler, which is the jet fuel truck. This is an assignment agreement. Lance is the initiator, it says, but either you'd like to speak on it or Steve.
Well, Lance usually gets left out of things on the agenda, so I put his name on this one. So
Good.
he's actually been negotiating with Phillips 66 to work on this.
Don't left out. So all this is an assignment of the fuel contract and of that contract that the previous owners had for the purchase of a refueling truck.
This is the lease of the fueling truck.
Right, so we initially got this a week and a half or so ago, and I sent it over to Steve, and then probably a couple days later, I get an email back from the Phillips 66 company saying that they wanted us to hold off on it because they assigned the note to somebody else. So the promissory note is actually owned by somebody else right now. So I guess it'd be my suggestion that we table this until the next meeting so that I can get all the paperwork from the company, but rather than doing an assignment on this and then having to do another assignment, depending on what that other promissory note says and who's holding it. I assume that what they're going to do is incorporate the promissory note into the assignment clause and then have both of them, and we'll basically just have one agreement that we'll do it whenever we get the updated assignment. But because we don't have one today, I think it's best to hold off on it until we get both of them. Odd to me that they didn't know they had assigned their note. It's only been a couple of years, but that happens. They have every right to do that, so.
It's like a bank selling your mortgage.
They just sold paper. Okay.
Yeah, we sold the
Is there a
paper.
time frame you think of when?
I thought it would be pretty quick. I talked to them last week on Wednesday or Thursday, and I haven't heard anything back, so I emailed them today, but I haven't heard anything since then. So probably hear something tomorrow. I emailed them pretty late in the day, but nothing as of last Wednesday when I told them to hold off.
Okay. So if it's okay with the council, we'll just table this until the next meeting or until it he receives the information that he needs to.
I would like to point out one thing. I think I've done this a couple times, but I would encourage the city to look at refinancing it, going through a private lender or something, paying off this obligation and doing a more formal lease purchase agreement as we normally would. This is sort of a funky transition, and part of it was due to the quickness of getting that the airport assets switched over. And so if you notice in the assignment, it's kind of talking like it's a lease purchase agreement, but it wasn't initially intended to be so. So I think it's sufficient for purposes of what the city wants to do, which is get control of that and be responsible for that agreement. But I would encourage them to look at possibly sending out bids and doing what's necessary for getting an actual lease purchase agreement issued and with a commercial bank or something.
Well, I mean, I could tell you Kristen's gonna do that. That's on the list, but I know one thing, we're not making a payment until she gets that agreement, signed agreement too, so. But we will definitely do that, I'm sure. Just, there was a lot going on, and let's get the agreement done first, and then I'm sure Kristen's gonna go out and look through, just kind of redo a lot of that stuff, yeah. Right. Because it's the jet refueler that we're talking about.
But you could put both trucks on there if you wanted to, couldn't
Well, we've
you?
already bought the.
We already bought
Oh,
it.
you did buy it outright,
We're
okay.
doing 100,000. So I want to go out and get local bids on that second truck and get it separated out of this agreement so I can clean it up
Okay,
and I can get a lot better interest.
okay. Okay, so we'll table this until the next meeting or until we get the updated.
So he's ready, yeah.
Are we good, council?
Just defer it
We'll just
to June 24th, or at such date the city attorney is ready to bring it forward.
So do we need a motion for that? I think we
Good, yeah.
Make a motion to table whatever one we were on.
I'll
second. Airport.
Item number. Isn't it number 7?
It's number 7.
table until either the next meeting or
Next meeting
until
or-
the attorney receives the information that is needed to approval. And you do second that motion, Jerry, still?
Yes.
So we have the clarified motion and second. Are there any final questions? Seeing none, please vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimous. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item number 8. This is a resolution opposing ballot initiative 16 in order to protect our livestock industry and prevent needless animal suffering. This is a proposal that I had, or a request that I had put in for this resolution. Many of the community members may be aware of this new pause initiative that was approved by the title board of the Secretary of State.
Spell pause,
PAUSE.
so people don't think it's PAWS.
No, PAUSE. And this is about animal rights. However, it took, as far as care and treatment of animals, and the problem is that it had some direct items inside that ends up changing and criminalizing common, longstanding, necessary veterinary and ranching practices of breeding and caring for animals. In short, if this initiative was to make it to the ballot and receive a majority affirmative vote, it would have devastating consequences for our local economy and for the state of Colorado. So this resolution is urging the city council to adopt this and direct the city clerk to submit a copy to the governor and the secretary of state. And in this resolution, I don't know, we don't need to read this full resolution out loud, do we? Or
I would read it by title only.
by title only? So this would be a resolution of the city council for the city of Lamar opposing ballot initiative 16 in order to protect our livestock industry and prevent needless animal suffering. Do we have any discussion on that? Do you have any questions about it? Or is everybody familiar with the pause ballot proposal? The county commissioners recently did a similar resolution against it, showing their support against it. They submitted it up to the state. If, you know, with us, the Prowers County is number 6 in the state for agricultural business. So agriculture is a significant portion of our economy in Southeast Colorado. And something like this would just devastate our ag economy, our communities, the farmers and ranchers in this area. So I wanted to make sure that we put this out there for them to let them know that we do not support this in any way.
I move we adopt resolution 21-05-1 and direct the city clerk to submit a copy to the governor and secretary of state.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to submit this resolution opposing ballot initiative 16 in order to protect our livestock industry and prevent needless animal suffering. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Agenda item number 9 is a similar resolution opposing Senate Bill 21-062. This is for jail population management tools concerning measures to reduce jail populations. This was initiated by Rafael Rodriguez, our city council member. So, Raf, would you like to speak on this a little bit?
Yeah, this is actually going to prevent officers from arresting suspects and taking them to jail. This includes some minor offenses, including some felonies. So basically, the offender can commit a crime, get arrested, and then would have to be released to go commit that crime again and again and again. This is just putting the public at risk. Everybody out there, you've either been a victim of a crime or know somebody who's been a victim of a crime. And what they're trying to do is just prevent officers from making the necessary arrests to protect victims. Basically, they're just giving more and more rights to the suspects and less for victims.
Okay. Do you have any questions from the council? Are you all familiar with the Senate bill? Yeah.
I move we adopt resolution 21-05-02 and direct the city clerk to submit a copy to the governor, senate, and house of representatives of the state of Colorado.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution and direct the city clerk to submit a copy to the governor, senate, house of representatives, and to the state of Colorado. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item, number 10, is a discussion that we wanted to have concerning Ordinance 1245. This is an ordinance establishing an advisory board of public safety for the city of Lamar, Colorado, for the city council to review. This is the draft ordinance, a month or two ago, I guess it's been 2, maybe 3 months ago. We created a little committee with 2 council members and Steve and the fire and police.
Raphael and
It was Raphael and Joe to develop this based upon our Public Safety Advisory Board. And we wanted to get the ordinance developed and passed. But before we put it out for the first reading and the second reading, the public hearing, and so on, through the process, we wanted to have a discussion and make sure that their draft was something that was appropriate for the council and that you felt you had the chance to look at. So Steve, would you like to speak on that a little bit more?
Yes, that was, like you said, a couple of months ago, we were tasked with coming up with a draft ordinance that would establish the Advisory Board of Public Safety. We did do that, submitted it to Kyle and Jeremy, obviously the police department, fire department for comment. We did meet, we did discuss, and you can see in the staff report, there's a couple things that it's comprehensive, but it's not overly burdensome, is the best way I can put this. There's just, we want the board to do like 4 basic things. Review any unresolved citizen complaints. It basically, if people feel that they can't resolve any kind of complaint, they would always have the Board of Safety to appeal to. So, it gives them that option. They can recommend to the administrative staff, meaning myself, the 2 chief, any kind of policy changes or things that may come in front of the community may pop up. Things are always changing, especially in our world today. We notice things changing every day, i.e. the 2 resolutions that we just had to pass. So number C, the third thing is provide a conduit to share the concerns and needs of both citizens in the city and the PD and fire department. So it's not just a forum for citizen complaints. It allows the 2 chiefs to have a board of public safety to, just bring things and run it by. And, the board would then, if they so chose, could make recommendations to the city council, for example. So, just things like that. They're just kind of a conduit to the council is the way that we worded it. And obviously they would continue to promote communication, understanding, and relationships between our public safety department and the public. And that to us was a very significant item and one of the main reasons for the Public Safety Board. We want to make sure that we have something in place that to show the community, hey, we take our citizen involvement, very seriously here in Lamar. We're very transparent. And we just think that this board would be, at least the ordinance now kind of provides that. And I think that since we were tasked with this directive from the mayor, I think we've kind of nailed it, but we just wanted to make sure we got everybody's input. And that's why it says on the agenda review and comment, because we know that we all think it's okay, but we haven't heard from the rest of the council yet. So if there's any questions or concerns or anything from the rest of the council, I'm sure one of us could answer that.
Would the 2 gentlemen on the committee like to speak on it? Joe, Rep?
Just a further comment on it. It was by no means to put a thumb on our police department or our fire department. It was just a means to bring transparency and bring some trust between our citizens and our fire department and police department. We wanted transparency out there. We wanted to have like Stephen mentioned, we wanted a conduit where our citizens can come forth and voice a concern and then have the Public Safety Board get involved and visit with the chief, both chiefs if necessary. It's just an advisory board. They have no authority whatsoever. They will bring everything to the administrative staff or to the council, and then it would go forth from there, all concerns that were brought forth. But once again, it was by no means used to put a thumb on our fire department or our police department. Just basically for transparency.
There's not much that Joe and Steve haven't covered already, so, yeah.
In a lot of cases, the board, my experience has been a board like this, it not only provides that conduit, but 99.99% of the time, it will validate what was done by our public safety departments because they are acting within the scope of their authority to do so. So like Joe said, it was by no means anything like that. But a lot of times, you know, it's nice to have that citizen board there to even validate things that are done to the community.
Right, it's one thing for us to say, you know, for Kyle to say, yes, we're doing that within the department, he's the head of the department. And it's another thing to have Steve say that, but to have a community advisory board come back and say, no, Steve said that, the chief said that, and we are validating that, yes, that is being done. It's a little harder for anybody in the community to say that there is anything being hidden. It's fully transparent. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. It's not just about oversight as much as it is just about creating that bridge between the community and these departments. And we're just wanting to make sure that when we talk about the public safety departments serving and protecting and doing the things that they do, we want to make sure that our community is fully aware of what they do. Not just the things they read in the newspaper, not just the complaints they hear in the community, but the good, the bad, every part of it. Because there's a lot that our police officers and our fire and ambulance do that gets not even recognized, not even acknowledged, because they don't look for those types of things. They're just doing their job, and that's part of it. This board will also give them the opportunity to share some of that information that people just don't know about. So.
And, you know, we did put some thought into the board membership and compensation. If you look, there is no compensation, although council obviously can change that at any time they so choose to for anything. But 5-member board.
Will that 5-member include the president and vice president?
Well, if you look here, what do you mean include the
So will the 5 members include them? I mean, will the vice president be within the 5? Or will there be an additional 2?
Oh, no, the 5-member board, out of those 5 people, they will elect their own president and vice president of the board. They're all, it's a 5 total membership board. So.
And they will be staggered terms.
Right.
Is president and vice president the right?
Be chairman, I thought.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't,
Change.
you know what, every board's a little different. Sometimes it's a chairman, sometimes it's a board president.
Yeah,
It's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of another. I mean, somebody will be elected to serve as chairman of the board to run the meetings, to preside over meetings. That's basically what it.
There'll be clear list of duties. So that way they don't think that there's overreach by the title of president.
Well, no, they're simply to preside over the meeting. They have no more authority or anything than anybody else on the board. No,
clearly pointed out in their duties.
It's pretty clear. And that's why there's a component also in the ordinance where this board can receive training. So if there is a class or something that the board should go to, we thought it was important that we send them to be trained properly if necessary.
So there's going to be 2 parts to this. Of course, you do the ordinance to develop and create the board, and then the board themselves, along with the staff or whoever is working with them, will develop the bylaws. And the bylaws will be more specific, but this is just more of the framework. And then off of the framework that we saying, here's the ordinance saying we're going to create this board. And then the board will need to do a bylaw and bring it back to us for that. And the bylaws will be more specific as far as the details of what their great scope of work would be. So that's what we've done in the past. Kyle, we haven't heard anything from you. Could we get your input on this draft ordinance?
Sure, yeah. So Steve gave me a chance to go through it and we worked, I don't know, for a couple of days probably going through it to find everything. I think it's something that could be very beneficial to us if everything goes as planned. And I think getting good members on that board will be very beneficial also, not only for us, but for the community members. So I think it's something that I'm interested to see how it goes, and hopefully it's a good thing for everybody.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions or comments concerning this or changes that you'd like to have made? I would like to see us change that from president to chairman, just for logistics purposes, but aside from that, does anybody have anything else they wanted to add or subtract?
So it looks like these 5 citizens will just be from the community. They're not.
At
For
large.
instance, we had the other 911 board that we did where they came from each ward.
But it's very important that that is in fact the case. This is not a county board of public safety. This is a city of Lamar. So if you look at C, reside within the city of Lamar. Loss of residency of a member shall cause for immediate forfeiture of office and a vacancy shall occur. They must reside within the city. If they don't, they immediately forfeit that office.
And as
I thought that was
difficult as difficult as it is to fill some of these boards, to try to limit it per ward, you know, it just doesn't, that adds another layer of difficulty. So that's why we were discussing just doing it at large within the city.
Well, and then that's why we put F in there. The city council may, but is not required to appoint one of its own members or the city administrator of the board. If at some point we cannot fill the board, and let's say there's a board vacancy, a council member can then, or the city administrator can serve on the board.
Right.
And then if there is somebody or there is somebody that would like the appointment, I can't imagine that there would be any problem with council members, city administrator just stepping off and letting a citizen appointment be made. But that's so you can have an odd number of board membership, which is always good. You don't want an even number of members on a board to eliminate any possibility of a tie vote,
And
or any.
we would assign a liaison like we do with most boards of accounts.
Right, but
That's
this,
not a voting member.
we threw that in there in the event that we had trouble making or finding appointments to the board. We just wanted to give the council that latitude. Never really expected that to happen. If there's 5 citizen members, we would assume that 5 would be appointed.
So my
So-
understanding is when the board comes in, similar to some of the other departments that have advisory boards, the director of that department or the public safety department would request the applications. They'd have a chance to review them. City council would have to, or the actual board would have a chance to review them. And then the board would give a recommendation to the city council, and the city council would have a chance to review them. So that would give 3 checks before they were actually approved.
Well, yeah, we actually put that in there, that the board members undergo a review process by the chief of police, fire chief, city administrator. Then what we do is make a recommendation to the city council. You, of course, can either accept or reject that recommendation.
Okay.
Or, conduct your own review. But that's that layered process that I think you're talking about, Kurt.
Right.
That will exist because, it's important that this board just operate correctly.
Well, and we want it to be a
Correctly.
positive board, and we want it to be
Right.
a positive change for the community. We don't want it to be just about somebody that wants to, that has a problem specifically. Those are the ones that should be visiting the board to discuss the problem, not,
Well, And if there is an issue, if you look under section 2, item B, they are subject to removal for any reason the city council considers sufficient.
Okay.
Doesn't matter what it is. And again, some of this language, I've actually, and I told the chiefs this, my entire career, I've operated with the Board of Safety. This is nothing new to me. So some of these requirements, they're tested and they really worked out well over the last 3 decades that I've been involved with it. So there's no reason to assume they wouldn't work out well here. That's where some of this language has come from, my own past experience. And it's important that these items be included in there, such as the removal, the appointment, the latitude of the city council to act in the best interests of the city.
all right. Do you have any other questions for Steve or the committee people, council?
Move we approve the project of the ordinance, place it on the next meeting agenda.
With the change of chairman
With the
and
change
vice
of
chairman,
chairman.
right? Okay.
And place it on the agenda for the first reading, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so the next meeting agenda, we would place it for the first reading of the ordinance. Do we have a second?
So moved.
That'd be a second, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to approve the draft ordinance with the change of the chairman and vice chairman and have it placed on the agenda for the next meeting as the first reading. Are there any final questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimous. The next item on the agenda is very similar. This is another item that we had assigned to a couple of council members and we created a committee to work on. This item is for the vacant building registration ordinance. The draft ordinance is ready for consideration by the council. We've left some blanks in this ordinance to discuss the fee structure for the ordinance, but we need to determine the fee structure and make sure that it's adequate. And we want to review the ordinance to see if it's ready for the first reading before we place it on the agenda. So similar to the last one, we just want to get some feedback and from the members of the committee and from Steve.
I know that, again, this similar to how Raphael and Joe worked on the previous one, Anne Marie and Jerry and kind of myself kind of worked on this. You'll notice that the actual draft ordinance in your packet has some yellow, obviously some blanks or some sections that are highlighted. Kind of just wanted to walk you through a couple things that we thought were important. The first one is in the definitions, the evidence of vacancy. That's going to be a very important definition. That's what's going to trigger this ordinance is that definition. So again, we thought that was sufficient.
So evidence of vacancy means any condition that on its own or combined with other conditions present would lead a reasonable person to believe the property is vacant. Such conditions include or are not limited to overgrown and dead vegetation, accumulation of newspaper, circulars, flyers, or mail, past due utility notices and or disconnected notice, accumulation of trash, junk, or debris, broken or boarded up windows, abandoned vehicles, auto parts or materials, the absence of window coverings such as curtains, blinds, or shutters, the absence of furnishings or personal items consistent with habitation or occupation, current owner's interest in the property has been foreclosed, statements by the neighbors, passerbys, delivery agents, or governmental employees that noting that the property is vacant. Yeah, that pretty much covers all of them.
It's indicative of a vacant structure. All
Well,
of these
and
are.
for those who are watching on this, you know, this is something that we've discussed for quite some time now. I know probably about 3 or 4 years ago, we initiated this discussion and I brought it back up this year as far as wanting to do something because we really do have a lot of, especially downtown, we have a lot of buildings that are sitting vacant and with no activity, no investment, these buildings are becoming dilapidated. They're getting critical. And if nobody does anything with it, it's going to end up being pretty big issues. So we were trying to create this vacancy ordinance to start tracking these.
And I know that, and I'm sure that Jerry will attest to this, it's important that we put the residential properties in this too. And I think the council acknowledged that and did want to include that in here. So this will cover residential and commercial. And this would just give us another tool to help, you know, with neighborhoods. A lot of times neighbors will call and, you know, that gives kids a place to congregate and it usually leads to problems, as everybody is well aware. Section 3, under vacant property, building registration will know under item 2, the owner shall register with the building and planning department not later than, we put 90 days after any building located in an area zoned for residential commercial use of the city becomes vacant, or not later than 30 days after being notified by the building and planning department. Is that sufficient?
I think that's fair.
Is that fair?
So we have a lot of vacant properties right now. So if this is passed, then as of 90 days after, I mean, owners have 90 days to register their properties after the passing of this ordinance, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, we're not gonna, we're not going to notify them and trigger the 30 days. Now, after the 90 days, or even, let's say 120 days, if buildings after that time become vacant, then we could trigger it and give the 30 days. But initially, there's that 90-day period in there. Yes, Amber. If you look on, it would be section 3 again. It would be item number 4, paragraph A. This follows if the building is to be demolished. This gives a demolition timeframe. Does everybody feel that that's reasonable? They have to include a proposed timeframe for demolition that includes starting within 90 days of the acceptance, basically the issuance of a demolition permit by Craig's office. And then we give them 1 year to complete the demolition. That sound reasonable, Craig? That sounds reasonable?
So the idea, I just had somebody ask on Facebook, but the idea that we're trying to do is that they register these properties that are vacant and they notify us of their intention, whether it be rent it, sell it,
Correct.
remodel it, or demolish it. Those are pretty much the 4 options that a property owner has. And they need to let us know what their plans are. We just don't want a property sitting there not doing anything at all. So if 90 days pass and they notify us that, well, we've been working on that property, you don't see it, or we're planning to start remodeling it in 6 months, that's fine. But we're going to hold them to their project plan, so that way it's not sitting there for 5 years, empty, blighted, and falling apart. If they do say that it's going to be rented, then yes, well, our intent is to hold you accountable. If you're going to rent it, please put out a rent sign, put out a for sale sign, show us that you're doing something with it. But we want to make sure that it's an active, viable property. And the intent is, rather than it sitting there for 5 years doing nothing at all except for deteriorating, we're ensuring that we have a property that's ready to rent. So if we have a new business that comes to Lamar and says, I'm looking for this, I'd like to have it, we don't have to wait 6 months for them to bring it up to code. It'll be ready to go. And we know that it's available for rent and or for sale.
Right.
So that's the idea. It's not an issue of, we just want to go in and bulldoze these and knock them all out. We don't want to, that's the last thing we want to do. We want to encourage them to reinvest in those properties, sell them, transfer them, do whatever they need to do, but do something with them.
Well, and I think for everybody at home, just so you know, this ordinance does not encourage the city doing any of that.
Right.
It basically gives the owner of the structure 2 choices. They may choose, they want to demolish it. That was the first demolition plan. Not the city. The owner could do that. That's fine. Or they could say, okay, city, we want to return the building to an appropriate use. So they have to submit a plan that covers one of those 2. Either A, you're going to use the building and return it to an appropriate use, or B, you want to demolish it. There's really no 2 other choices. So just so you know, they can submit a rehabilitation plan, obviously mean remodeling plan. The rehabilitation plan shall not exceed 12 months from the time the building permit is obtained, unless the city administrator authorized designee grants the extension upon receipt of written statement, the owner, meaning they have 12 months to remodel it, but we give them latitude. If it's a large building or large structure, it may take longer than 12 months. But if somebody's actively working on remodeling it or rehabilitating it, there's no reason we wouldn't grant them an extension because they're actively doing it. So there is a lot of latitude in the ordinance for somebody who is truly trying to comply. And I mean, as long as that sounds reasonable, I guess that's where we were going with this. Does that kind of sound reasonable to the council? I mean,
but we do have some properties in town where the family left it to the son or daughter or children or the trust, and the trust is disappeared, or the family lives in New York City and doesn't even care about Lamar, doesn't even look at the property, hasn't done anything except pay the taxes, if that. So, it's for those properties that we really are trying to address, making sure that somebody's held accountable to it. So.
And we kind of cover that in paragraph in section still same section, but paragraph 7, where a new owner shall register or re-register the building.
Right.
We do cover that in there. There are inspections, there's inspection process that everybody that they need to go through. There are vacant building fees, and that's kind of what was left blank. We simply weren't sure. Some of the ordinances that we reviewed, the fee structure seemed to be, for lack of a better term, a little bit outrageous, in our opinion. So we didn't want to guess at what a fee structure could be. We'd rather, that's why we have review and comment on here. We kind of like to get some input, and I know Kirk had some ideas, and
I'm okay with no fee at the first year. I mean, all we want them to do is register it and let us know what their intent is. That's all we're looking for. However, if they don't follow through with that, and a year goes by and they have done nothing with it, then yes, there should be a fee the first year, the second year, the third year.
There could be some staff time involved in that first year, correct? So
Well,
I think it would be nice to have, no fee the first year, but
there would be a little bit of staff time. Year one, if you look at the way we set this up, there's an annual fee of blank for the first year, then a fee, then a second year, third year, and then fourth year and every subsequent year after. Now, if you're still doing this after 4 years, that really means you've done nothing.
Right.
So I think, Kirk, so you're saying to backload this?
Yeah.
Meaning, hey, let's give everybody a shot at doing it in the beginning, but after 4 years, it's obviously you're
putting this off.
You're simply putting this off. So I think that's where you're going with it.
And I actually think on the third year, that's pretty much putting this off. But it doesn't say that in here, but I think we should have the ability to waive the fee, maybe charge a fee the second year, the third year, the fourth year, with the ability to waive it depending on progress. I mean, if they're in the middle of doing the renovation and they hit the second year, I mean, I think that we could leave that for interpretation. I mean, why charge them if they're actually putting the money into the property? But if they're not, and it's just sitting there, they've not done anything to it. Also, you run into the problem of, well, I have it for sale. I'm just asking for $5 million for this $40,000 building. There's some reality there that after 4 years, you're not going to sell it for $5 million. You're not really trying. So we don't want it to go on for 2, 3, 4 years if that's the case.
Well, if in section 6, we have exemptions. So there's a whole list of exemptions for, I guess, for example, for a building that has been granted an exemption pursuant to the following provisions, meaning any of these in the exemptions. Any owner of a vacant building may request an exemption from the provisions of this chapter, meaning this ordinance, by filing a written application with the building and planning department. So
right.
If there are any extenuating circumstances or things that we do have the ability for exemptions to be requested for reasonable, it's got to be reasonable, obviously, but so to try to build upon what you said, that's why we included a whole bunch of exemptions in here where, it gives people latitude if they're truly trying to comply.
Okay.
But I mean, I see what you're saying. So we still have to put dollar amounts in these blanks. And I don't know that tonight is sufficient time for you all to think about that, or.
Well, similar to the previous ordinance discussion, why don't we hear from the two people that were on the committee, Anne Marie and Jerry? Would you guys like to speak on it a little bit, Anne Marie?
So, I think it's fair to every neighborhood in town and every commercial property that we preserve our neighborhoods, and it's not fair for one house on a street where the owner is absentee, does not care, does not put it as a priority, and it drags down the entire neighborhood. So it really does make that the owner accountable. But I didn't want it to be, there's that fine line between encouraging people to take action on their properties versus just crazy penalties. So I do believe in your thought that the first year should be low and then increasing penalties after that. But, and initially my focus was on commercial properties because it would help entities like Broward's Economic Prosperity to know what commercial properties are out there. And the inspection part of it, what's necessary to bring that building back into life. So I really like that. But we have an issue with residential housing as well. And I feel good about this proposal. We just need to smooth out the rough edges on the fees and the penalties. And everybody on this council has to feel good about those.
Jerry, do you want to speak on it a little bit?
And I'm like Anne Marie. I feel with the residential property, it's kind of embarrassing when you have somebody move here from California and they're like, the neighborhood's really great, but this one house, nobody's doing anything to it. And it's bad. You know, and you ask them, and that's like Anne Marie says, it's really nice when you have a nice neighborhood and then you have that one house that is the sore thumb. And I understand if they're working on it because we all have to keep up our properties and our yards and stuff. And I can see people doing that, but they need to take pride in their property and pride for our little town. We need to have something that looks decent. And
a timeline for completion too, right, Jerry?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Craig Brooks is our building inspector. And would you like to speak on that a little bit as well? There's a microphone for you.
Gee, thanks.
You betcha.
I think some of the blight within the city definitely needs to be addressed. I like the potential proposal. I think your ideas of front loading it and then back loading it is a positive step. We do have some people that are interested in repairing, fixing, doing something with their property, but may just not have the means or whatever, and they're working on that. And I think there's some flexibility that needs to be had with that. So I agree with that concept. There's 137 blighted houses, residential, in the city of Lamar right now. So that's a lot for our town.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something that I think we should continue to pursue and try to get to a bottom line and work on. And I'm supportive of that.
You know, it won't be burdensome on Craig either, because as Craig just said, he's already done, if you look under the inspection section here, external inspections are part of it. Craig's already done all the external inspections, and we already have a complete book developed of all of those residences, even identified which ones could be remodeled, which ones could be. So as far as a burden on the staff for identifying these structures, we've already done it as part of the copper project. Right. So in that respect, that's good. Now, his office will have additional work because obviously we've done the inspection. We have 137. Who's going to track them?
Right.
Well, again, that's going to require additional time to do that. But again, it's important because, as Jerry and Anne Marie said, you know, blight in the neighborhoods, you know, that not only invites unwanted things to happen, it detracts from property values as well. And like they said, it's not fair to everybody else on the property that takes pride in their home. So,
and there are just to know that this property owner is sitting on this property with the intent to build. There are so many different programs that are out there through SECED, through, you know, HUD. There's just different programs that maybe we can help them find resources for, as long as we knew that that's what their intent was. But right now we have no idea. It's just sitting there deteriorating as a building. You know, or maybe somebody's been looking to buy that for years because they're wanting to flip homes. But unless we know who owns the property and what they're going to do with it, we have no clue on what their intentions are or what the possibilities are either.
Well, and you know, if we required somebody to register these properties, I mean, somebody could come in and say, hey, you know what? Here's my registration, but I have a sales contract on this. They're gonna close in 4 months.
Fine, great.
Great, that's, now that to us is a plan. Okay, they have a plan in place on how they're going to take care of this resident. So it could be something like that. And that's why, if you look in here, it gives the city administrator and the building commissioner the latitude to work with people. So like Anne Marie said, you have that fine line. We're not a burden. We're just trying to help the neighborhood, help the city. So,
I have a question on section 5,
sure.
number 3. Talk about delinquent fees paid by the owner. A lien may be placed on property to collect delinquent fees. What happens if they just like, well, it's got a lien on it, and I'm still not going to do anything with it?
Eventually, at some point, similar to some of the other properties we have in community, that don't do the mowing and different things like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Linda, eventually those build up so high to where the city either takes action or.
What's that action?
Well, and that's not necessarily it. So when the liens are filed, it's filed against the property. So at the time of property tax, those liens are included in that. If the property owner chooses not to pay their property tax or the lien, then the county treasurer puts it up for sale. Potentially another entity could buy it, or the county takes it over. And then at that point, if the city, if somebody comes to the city, because we're the ones who filed the lien, they come to the city and say, we're interested in this property. Are you willing to work with us on it? And in the past, the city has worked with multiple people on these properties.
It's actually quite common.
And it gives a
plan of
But
what
it-
they want to do with the property.
But if it's at a point where it is just an absolute safety hazard, as we've done in the past, that's when Craig, we go to Lance and we start the process of condemnation and, you know, demolition, obviously, if it's that bad. And we've done that with how many structures, Craig? Dozens.
At least 6 or 7 where we have to go the legal route.
Go the legal route, so. I mean-
Once that happens, we include it.
Right. So that option always exists for us. This is kind of gives us an avenue to follow before we get to that point. You know, just a little more latitude, I guess. Because if we show up in front of a court and we say, well, here's our ordinance, here's what's been going on, this is why we didn't do it. I mean, at least we're showing, you know, to the court, we're showing that, hey, we have something in place. We're giving people options. Not only that, we have exemptions for that. But this has just gotten so bad, it's become, you know, basically a safety hazard. So I think it could help in that regard.
I've got a question. Has there been any consideration for different fees for what's on Main Street considered the residential areas? Because, I mean, we've got open areas on Highway 50 from all the way north to south where there's vacant buildings, where those buildings could be occupied by another business, but are being prevented for several reasons. We've had, for instance, I'll use Burger King as an instance. I mean, Burger King is closed. There's no potential openings for that. And it's almost like being blocked for future business to come into that building right there. Has there been any consideration to use a different scheduling of fees for just Main Street itself other than residential? That way we can promote those owners on Main Street and Highway 50 to do something with those businesses.
Well, Burger King would be a prime example of what would fall under this ordinance. Vacant building, it's vacant building registration. You know, it's starting to get overgrown. It's starting to get, you know, that Burger King would be required to follow the provisions of this ordinance, just like any local owner. And if they didn't.
But I understand that part, but I guess the point that I was making, an owner that can own a building like that is not going to have a problem paying $100 fine just to hang on to the property. So I'm not going to do nothing with it.
So you're saying have a separate fine for residential and a separate fine for commercial?
Correct. Has that ever
A higher
been,
fine.
yeah, considered?
We could, we haven't done the fines.
Well, we certainly can.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, you can, as long as you treat, it's just like treating, just like we're talking about with parking. As long as you treat all the same classes of structure the same, you're completely on solid ground. Keep all the residential the same, all the commercial the same, you are absolutely within your rights to do that, Joe. And again, I'm glad that came up because that's why we're having this discussion. And that there is some merit, I believe, to what you just said, yes. Now, that being said, what were your ideas?
And I agree. I think that would be a good idea. You know, for a vacant building, when we look at the section 5, you're talking about the vacant building fees, and you're saying the first year being a fee of X amount, second year, third year, fourth year. For a residential property, I would be okay or comfortable with saying first year 0, second year 50 or 100, and then go on for 150, 200. But for Main Street, you know, I would be more along the lines of first year 0 or first year $50 so we can use inspection and have it inspected. Second year doing more like a $300 or $400.
I agree with you on that.
Because we want to encourage them to do something within the year. And either they come back to get an exception because they're doing significant work, or they pay the fee to keep it with the for sales sign.
So we have.
Did you have an
residential-
idea there?
Well, so
Lance?
I guess I have a concern if we start evaluating them or separating them differently, then we're gonna need to have a different definition or how to determine what's gonna be residential. I mean, some cases are obvious, but other cases it's not obvious what's gonna be commercial and what's gonna be residential. And just located on Main Street, I don't think is sufficient. I think we need a good definition on what the.
Our zoning would be commercial,
Zoning would
residential,
be
and
one way to
industrial.
do it.
Right, zoning's fine.
Zoning would be your obvious.
Still have a lot of businesses that aren't located on Main Street,
Right.
that are in the
We just do
community.
it by zone.
I mean, I think zoning that would attack 99%. There's always those few that could go either way, but I think by and large, 99% of what we're concerned with would be addressed by using zoning classification.
So if we group the zones like O and E is a
Well-
residential, you have a residential, what else is there in that group category?
We have industrial.
Well, industrial would be different.
Well, Craig, I would think agricultural, industrial and commercial would be treated the same. That'd be one group. Then the rest would then fall into maybe a residential category. Would that make sense, Craig? Or?
Makes sense, because mobile homes would be more in the residential anyway, even though they're sold separately.
Okay. So we can classify it that way and just group them by the zones.
Commercial. Residential. Okay, I guess that being said, that can certainly be done as part of this ordinance, but we still are at the fee
are what we're
schedule.
missing. And I think, you know, the 100, 150, 200, as far as the second, third, fourth year, on residential,
So 0 first year.
on residential,
Okay, so 0,
100, 150, 200.
150, 200.
Okay, and I'm throwing these
That,
out.
that takes us through 4 years.
On this, it says the second offense. What's the offense?
Not registering your building. Like if we give you notice and say you got 90 days to register your building, they blow us off, they can get issued a ticket for first offense,
$100.
$100. And then they
Plus
go,
we have to pay
then
the-
they go another, let's say Craig says, okay, you've got 45 days to register your building. 45 days comes up, they get a ticket for a second offense.
That's what I want to know.
That's what it,
In your structural fee, I start out at 25, 50, 75, then go to this. That's
Well-
raising that $25 a year, you can get this, then you can do whatever.
well, we get to year 4, and they haven't done anything yet, then obviously we're gonna need to go to the next step. Maybe we get the city attorney involved because we clearly are not getting anywhere. So,
Yeah, and I was thinking that for residential and then commercial, looking at more along the lines of 0, 250, 500.
well, we got, well, Oscar, were you talking about residential starting out with $25 rate?
Yes.
What
So-
were you thinking on?
My personal feeling is, I like the idea of 0 for residential as a first year, and then maybe $50 for commercial for first year, because commercial property is worth more, and hopefully, and there's more pressure to get that renovated and back in production to help our town.
So we have,
That would pay for an inspection if we needed to just have them go in and say, yeah, if you really want to rent this out, you're gonna need to do the roof, you're gonna need to get the wiring fixed, you have to get this done. And that way it gives something to help offset some of that, I guess. I don't,
And then maybe double the fees each year, so.
so we go, well, what's been suggested is Oscar started out with $25, Kirk started out with 0.
This is residential.
Did I hear 75?
I'll start out with 0. That makes
Oh, yeah, I would start with 0.
Okay, so I,
0 for residential.
see, I did, yeah, for residential, I have 0 first year, 100 second year, 150 third year, and 200 fourth year. Is that too high going forward, or?
there shouldn't be a reason for a residential to be empty for 2 years. I mean, it's,
Well, that's what I mean. We got 0 first year, 100 the second year.
Right.
So you want to just, I mean, once I plug them in, obviously everybody can look at them in writing then.
What did you say for the third year?
0, 100, 150, 200. What about the industrial and commercial then?
that I would bump up. You said $50 to start with.
Well, that's what I heard. I think
believe that's what
Emery,
Emery
I think Emery suggested 50.
But I was saying 250, 500, and 1,000. Mainly because we want to get those things built, but that
So
might be a
50.
little wave stream. Maybe we can go
Well, I mean,
something less. What do you think?
you know, you could go 0,
Commercial.
then you could go 100, but then go, now if you get past 2 years, then maybe you jump it up to 500. But again, your same thought process is backloaded. I don't know, this is where it got, this is where we stopped because we weren't sure what to do here.
255, 750.
0, 250, 5, 750?
And of course, these are circumstances where we're considering that these aren't buildings that are already for lease and they're trying to get them built. And there's just nobody filling
They're
them.
not for sale.
Right.
Oh, well,
You know, I mean, and so.
they're exempt, they're
Right,
exempt
they have
from this.
exemptions. And we're just talking about buildings that are
Well,
light or dilapidated.
Yeah, number 3.
And they're not really rentable the way the condition that they're in. And we're wanting them to move in some direction to try to get it rentable.
Right, well, we
or
actually,
sale,
a
or
building that's,
Utilized.
a building that's actively under construction or renovation, they're exempted. A building which suffered fire damage or extreme weather conditions, they're exempted for 180 days. A building that is for sale and listed with a licensed real estate agent shall be exempted. If the building is for sale by owner, then the owner should provide proof. So we tried to cover that. A building that has been granted exemption and found within the owner may request an exemption. And that also, any of those building owners can request an exemption for a different reason. Not being able to think of everything here. That's why I believe it's in there. So, yeah, Manuel, to answer your question, I mean, we are offering exemptions. The whole idea is, hey, let's see some progress. If everybody's just kind of ignoring the process and ignoring the building and it's falling down around us, that's kind of what this is designed to go after.
So I pay the $50 for my commercial property. I have it inspected. Craig tells me you need to do these things. I'm working on it and I have a building permit and I'm actively working on it and a year comes by. I can request that exemption because I can show proof that I'm doing the progress. Or if I paid the $50 and I put it on the market with a real estate agent, I can request that exemption because it's trying to be sold or it's trying to be rented or whatever those exemptions are that are in the ordinance. But the idea is tell us that you're doing something, make sure you're doing something. And if you don't, then we have to backfill that with these violations that we have for the written.
For sale within reason.
Right. If they're reasonably trying to make an effort.
Well, and just make sure this is not going to be Craig Brooks Inspection Services on every building here, but
Right.
if it says may in the ordinance, meaning if an owner is seriously wanting to move forward, they can request a little assistance from the city, yes.
What do we need to do? What's gonna take to fix it? You know?
Right, what can bring this up to code?
Right.
Basically is what the question would be, right?
So back to the scheduling on the commercial side, what did we agree on?
I didn't agree, I don't have anything written down.
And that's why I was saying the bigger amount, the 250, the 500, the 750, because, well, if you're actively trying to sell it, we don't need to charge you the 250. If
I like
you're
that.
actively trying to sell it
Yes.
or rent it or fix it, we're not gonna charge you 250. So these are extreme amounts because unless you're not doing anything at all, this is what we're gonna charge you.
And ignoring this
And
completely.
ignoring this ordinance, then
So should we do 0, 250, 500, 1,000?
we could.
If you get to year
I mean-
four,
Well, I thought we were at 250, 500, 750 and 1,000.
no, it's 4 years. So meaning if we went to 1,000 the fourth year and every year thereafter,
It's $1,000.
$1,000. But if you get to year four, you're really ignoring everything and you just don't care.
Right.
And I mean, the odds are nobody's gonna come in and pay the 250 and the 500 anyway, and we're gonna end up putting a lien on it. That, in reality, that's probably what's gonna happen.
In some of the communities, the owners, after the liens got so high, the owners just told the city, here, take it, I don't want it. They washed their hands of it and the city ended up with the property. But
Which we don't wanna own everything.
we don't want to own the whole
That's
city.
burdensome on the city too, you know.
And we can, auction it, sell it, do whatever we need to, but that's what we've seen in the past as well.
So are we doing just for
Commercial.
50, 250, 500, 1,000 then?
That's better. I think 50 as an initial fee is a legitimate fee and it incentivizes them to get it on the roll.
Our vehicle registration. Registered vehicle, right? Yeah. The idea is to get them to do something with it.
Well, and again, if they meet one of these exemptions, they're not qualified as a vacant building, so they don't have to register.
Right.
If it's for sale, if it's trying to be leased, if it's out there and they're actively marketing it, it's exempt.
And I got a quick question on section 6 exemptions.
Sure.
3, the very last sentence where it says the city expressly reserves the right to request any other documentation. To provide proof that the building is actively for sale by the owner. Would that include like an appraisal where, we've got a $40,000 building and they're asking $5 million?
Well, if somebody,
Can-
if somebody
Does that-
says,
does that include that?
if somebody says, well, we have it for sale by owner, really? Well, if we see nothing, if there's no sign in the window, no number, there's no appointments, we're gonna say, well, where else do you have it for sale at? Do you have it listed on websites? Do you have it, we can ask for additional information. And again, it could include anything up to an appraisal. I mean, yeah, if somebody says, oh, I have it listed for sale, $5 million, well, obviously,
You're not trying very hard.
yeah, you're obviously just trying to avoid and again, that's why we tried to put that language in there. We don't want to be, for the person who's legitimately trying to sell the property, we want it to be fair. But for the person who is just simply trying to get around the provisions of the ordinance, we wanted to try to capture that, but again, there's no way we're gonna think of every scenario. So,
And we can modify this ordinance in the future if we need to adjust it. The same with the fees.
Any public comments on this discussion?
There were some comments on the Facebook that talked about, one was asking what we would be doing with the funds that we would receive from this ordinance. As far as fees are concerned, hopefully we don't collect any funds. Hopefully people will continue to work on this. Keep their properties up or rent them or sell them. they'll fall under those exemptions and we won't receive any funds in. If there are like $50 initial fee for commercial properties, that would be used to offset the cost for the building department that, if they have to work with them to do maintenance or kind of to maintain this. Another question was, what if it's an investment for future and you don't want to sell right now? If it's an investment for the future, we would need to know what your plan was for the future. Are you planning on remodeling it within a year, 2 years? Are you planning on renting it? Are you planning on selling it 5 years from now? Or are you planning on just sitting on it? Obviously, we're not wanting you to sit on it for 5 years. That's not an investment if it's becoming dilapidated. So our intent is to try to make the building accessible and available to use. So whether you're renting it out to somebody, whether you're selling it, whether you're remodeling it for future use, or demolishing it to where you can build something else and sell it as blank property. The idea is to do something with it.
Well, if that question came in, that's why there's a provision in the ordinance for a vacant building plan.
Right.
Hey, bring in your plan. If it's reasonable, obviously we're fine with it,
Right.
So there are a lot of what ifs incorporated, well, as many as we reasonably think of, but for everybody that's worried at home about that, then, all we're basically, I think what this is, hey, just a little communication with the city. So when we get questions about, hey, why isn't anything being done with this building? It's fallen down, it's doing this, that, we can answer questions about different buildings. And I think that's one of the major things, and, and also just so our Main Street looks nice and brings up property values. It's all about property values and, encouraging businesses to locate in downtown too. If it's not dilapidated and it's thriving and every business looks really nice,
Right.
More shopping occurs, more foot traffic, property values increase. It's got a snowball effect.
And similar to the residential opportunities, there are programs out there, whether it's Department of Local Affairs or different programs that are out there that are meant to help rehabilitate buildings. We did have through downtown development, we had a frontage where it helped with storefronts and remodeling those for
Facade improvements.
That's correct. So there are different programs out there. We just need to know what your plan is. And if we knew what your plan is, it would be easier for us to come back in and do something with it. So.
And if a business owner, we have one right now, if a business owner submits us a plan where they want to make improvements to their building, facade improvements or whatever, we have one right now.
Right.
As a matter of fact, that I went and met with, handed that off to Morgan. And Morgan's now working with their contractor to get drawings and renderings to show what they want to do. Well, that to me is somebody who's actively trying to make an improvement to their building. So obviously that would be an exemption under this.
Right.
That's just an example we're dealing with right now.
And there are lots of buildings in the city that are for sale for a long time. There's a Facebook comment about the Davies Motel being gone because it stood vacant for decades. Well, he was actively trying to sell it, so he would have applied for an exemption. Okay.
Yep.
Are we good with the violations as far as including both residential and commercial, or should we separate them as well?
I would say we should probably separate those two as well. For the violations, you have a sample of written warning, $100 fine, $250 fine, $500 fine, and $1,000 fine. This is the violation would be they're refusing to register their property or they're refusing to follow through the plan that they give us.
Right.
Their own plan. So, if they're not willing to register it for free, and they're not willing to follow through with the plan they have, or at least work with us to try to find a way to help them to do that.
Well, these this violation, remember, the violation provisions, these only go out 30 days each. They don't go out a year.
Yeah.
So to really up them gets a little, gets a little
Pricey.
But remember, this doesn't follow the same schedule as the registration.
Okay.
If they're issued a notice of violation, on that notice, they have 30 days to correct it. 30 days not corrected, second offense, boom. So we're talking like a matter of months here, not years. That's the difference between the registration process and the violation process.
Right.
And this way, there's no question as to what each violation costs. Now, when we get up into the fourth offense, into the 500 level, Kyle, how would we handle the 500 level?
Would we be able to?
I mean, we got 300 as the max.
Right, so that's only for the fine in court. So the fee, I believe you guys can set whatever you want. So the registration fee could be up to 1,000. But if we're gonna go write them a ticket, the maximum fine can only be $300 plus the surcharge, which is 37% on top of that. So the
So-
maximum fine the court could issue is $300.
So basically, the first offense, I have written warning. Second offense would be 100, third offense would be 250. Fourth offense can only be 300 max.
Yeah, or 100, 200, 300. I mean, just first offense is 100, second offense is 200.
And
third
then
offense
that's
is
it.
300. Right.
Okay. So we go 100,
I guess the
200.
question is, how are we gonna charge the owner that lives out of state?
When they don't pay the tickets, then eventually Linda will place a lien on the property, and that usually gets the attention of somebody who's out of state, simply is an absentee owner, landlord.
I think that would come into the fee part. So if they fail to register for 2 or 3 years, we try to go write them a ticket. They live in Alabama or wherever they live. We obviously can't drive down there for $300 and try to get them back. So I think that's where the liens would probably come in.
Right.
Would be, instead of writing a ticket and making them come to municipal court, we just start putting liens on the property.
Well, the thing is, they would get tickets and wouldn't show up.
If we could get it served correct.
If we can get it served, but if we write tickets and they're ignored, then eventually there's gonna be outstanding, there are gonna be warrants that are outstanding, and Linda at some point will file a lien, I guess, right? Or
I can't file a lien.
what would, no,
I can file a lien on
non-payment?
for the fee. Okay,
Also non-payment of the actual registration fee,
Correct.
but we would have to go to court
yeah.
to enforce the,
I don't think I could file a lien
okay.
for an unpaid ticket.
Correct.
Would it, so
Right.
for a non-paid ticket then,
We would, if it got to that point, we wouldn't write them a ticket. If they're living in Alabama, there's no point in us trying to find them to write them a ticket. It's just,
just go to
it's a
court.
waste of paper, right? We start filing liens. If
Right,
we get to that point, we go with Lance and we start,
and just go to court, okay.
go through the court process.
Well, then if that's the case, we kind of have an idea of the violation.
Right.
Well, the discussion was meant to be a discussion to help frame, set the framework of this ordinance for the first reading. When we do the first reading, we will have to read this full ordinance out loud, so the public can hear it. Once that is completed, then we would have public hearing. Is that correct?
It's an ordinance, so yes.
Okay, and then once we have the public hearing, then we would vote for the second reading to approve it for the final second reading. And then it would actually go into the
That's what we did on the sits of one. We did the same thing.
Ordinance, yeah.
So that gives the opportunity for the public. I know there's some people making comments and have some questions on Facebook. I'd encourage you to basically ask your council members over the next couple of weeks if you have questions about this ordinance. If you have suggestions about the ordinance, talk to your council member. Get them clarified or visit for the public hearing. That's that. But our intent tonight was really to have a discussion to get it ready for the.
I mean, if we can Are we gonna be ready for a reading in 2 weeks, or should we? I was just talking about Lance, he's gonna take a couple sections of this and redraft them pursuant to what we just discussed here, so.
I don't know.
If you think, well, if we're gonna do a public hearing at the same time, at the same night that we do the ordinance.
Well, I don't know that it's gonna be ready by then.
The timeframe that I need for posting. I have to have at least 2 weeks notice that we're gonna do public hearing.
I thought we read the first reading, we approved the first reading, and then they scheduled a public hearing.
I think so.
And the third one, you follow. Or is that?
I don't know what we did the last
My
one.
budget, we do the public hearing the same night as we do the first reading.
The first reading or the second?
You know,
The public
but
hearing
I
is the
don't,
first
that's,
reading.
yeah, how that works.
Because it always says, or introduced, read in full, passed on first reading, and ordered published. Is what,
In order to publish.
an order published. That's what every ordinance we have says the same thing.
We do first reading and then order published. But for the public hearing, that's separate from what the ordinance.
You order the ordinance published, is what you're saying. Okay.
I can't find to pull up, so.
I'll look and see what we did on the last one and then get back to you.
I'm still gonna need an opportunity to correct these and make these changes to it, so it's gonna take me at least a week to get that done, so.
So,
And I think we're still a little hesitant on, we'd like to see the fees one more time before we approve it in the first reading.
it sounds like the public has a lot of questions about this too.
Yeah.
So maybe for May 24th, maybe just another draft for review and comment then, and, okay.
Okay. So we'll plan for that. Are we good with that, council? Yes. Bringing it back.
And then people that have concerns, maybe during that meeting, we'll have a chance to ask questions then, you know.
Okay. All right, so we will bring that back to the next meeting to have a second draft and we will before we go to first reading. All right, are there any other questions on that topic? Logically, welcome to the next speaker. All right, moving on, we have our final agenda item on second to last agenda item. Proposed agreement for law enforcement and security services for the after prom committee. Chief Miller, would you like to speak on?
Absolutely. So the after prom committee came to us and they're gonna do some festivities this year. And they're requesting a couple officers from 12 a.m. to 3 a.m. on May 14th. So prom is on the 13th. After prom is at midnight on the 14th, and they want the officers there until 3 a.m. This is standard agreement that we do with all of them for security contracts, just different names and dates.
Second.
Motion in a second. And
Emery.
a motion in a second to approve. Any final questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you.
All right, miscellaneous items. Do we have anything for the miscellaneous items? Once again, I encourage council, whoever can join me, to please join me on Saturday morning, 9:30 for the Lamar Day parade. We're gonna have, Pat is working on a trailer that'll have some details, so we can sit and wave and we film some representation. Find out that.
Yeah, where are you gonna have the trailer at on Saturday morning?
Lower and louder.
Could I bring you guys, I won't be able to make it. I will be in Pueblo for a
Shooting her. The competition shoot. Well, bring your family to what you're doing. Second. Have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any final questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us for this